So good afternoon or good morning or good evening, depending on when you're listening to this. I suppose good day. Welcome to the latest episode of the Respect podcast, where we're going to talk about all things respect over the series with various people who have lots of things to tell us. This one, we're hopefully going to talk about the importance of values and fears, which if I have my way, this is the most important episode. But I've got lots of other people here to tell you all sorts of useful things about respect, and I'm going to get them to introduce themselves now. So, Caroline.
Hi, I'm Caroline Toman, Advanced Clinical Practitioner. I'm a paramedic for South Western Ambulance Service.
Thank you. Fiona.
I'm Fiona Eggerton. I'm a community frailty matron based in the North Cotswolds.
Lovely to have you. Sonia.
Hello, I'm Sonia Vaz Fernandes. I'm a geriatrician based in the Frailty Unit in Gloucester Hospital and also Cheltenham Community Locality.
Thank you for coming in. And Niamh.
Hi, I'm Niamh. I'm one of the F2s currently working on the renal ward at Gloucester Royal Hospital.
Lovely to have you. And just to say that Niamh is actually on call at the moment. So if her crash fleet goes, she is running back to work. And for those of you that don't know, my name's Tanya de Weymarn. I am an emergency medicine and frailty consultant working at Cheltenham and Gloucester hospitals, and also clinical lead for end of life for the ICB for Gloucestershire. So, values and fears. I know there's some people that have some views on this. So who wants to start the conversation? Go on, Sonia.
Okay, fine. I have to say that I love this section because for me, as a geriatrician, but I think for all of us looking after patients, our priority has to be purpose, helping people live their life with purpose, on purpose, until the last moment of that life. And I never have enough of saying that. And the values and fears section helps us to do that because it allows us to dabble in art, shall I say, because it helps you to paint a picture of the person. And the more detail you can put in there, just imagine if you happen to be going around a gallery, one little scribble or scrawl versus a detailed picture, it will give you a lot more information. And for those of us who are making recommendations in the clinical section, you know that the more information you have there, the better your decision will be. And for me, those values and fears, they are my compass. If I am with a patient and their relatives and even with clinical staff in the MDTs, if we're trying to make a decision on that person, then trying to understand what's important to them is key. So much so that now, those of you who see a patient that I've seen in the diagnosis section, we will always have what matters most to the patient at the top of the list because that is our compass in all our decisions.
And I think that's so true. Even if we're not doing a respect conversation, knowing whenever we see a patient what matters to them means that we can actually provide personalised care.
Person-centred care.
Yes.
That's the
person-centred care. And personalised care. I don't know. They're both, it's all about it being individual, exactly. I suppose.
Yeah.
Tell me, so I see some really rubbish respect plans. Did you see how well I controlled the swearing there? Sorry.
Well done.
The editors will be very glad I didn't do swearing. So I see some really rubbish respect plans, and I have to say that I feel you can't complete a respect conversation without values and fears. So as consultants, you and I, Sonia, may well be the ones that are presented with a partially completed respect plan to add clinical recommendations. So I'm going to ask you guys for your thoughts on either how you elicit those values and fears from people, even if you don't then write them on the respect plan, how you go about doing it and what sort of things are useful, you think, or how you summarise what can be a really big topic for people.
I normally take it from, I think, when you're sort of working through what you're doing, particularly clerking or on call, once you get to the social history for the patient of sort of who they live with, how they move, how, sort of their level of independence, and then asking them, it doesn't take much to sort of say to them, okay, and how would you feel if that were to change in hospital? Is there anyone at home that you could help you? Because sometimes if patients have and you see it, especially in the elderly, they go home, they come back a week later or they go home and they sort of are reaching that level of maybe I do need a bit of extra help, maybe I do need some more support, they've actually thought about that and they can tell you, actually, I'm getting to the level where I need a bit of help. I'm aware that maybe we could put this in place, or I've been thinking about that. And actually they've had their own thoughts, which can be really helpful then when you're admitting someone to then start thinking about, actually, this is where they want to be, this is where they are now. How can I help set that up right from the minute they walk in the door? Which I think can be really helpful.
I love it. It's just music to my ears, because one of the things I say is that your discharge planning starts the second the person crosses the threshold of the building. So it's trying to understand where they're at now, what is their baseline, what can they do. But I think you also hit on a really important thing. It's something to do with listening. So I always remember this one ward round going around with a resident doctor, and this woman just said, "I'm tired." And he said, "Oh, don't worry, we will sort things out and you'll be out of hospital shortly." And I just paused a moment and went, "Tired of?" And then it turned out that she was tired of life. And that led into this whole discussion of, what is it that actually makes your life meaningful for you right now? I understand that you're frail, and yes, at this moment in time you're in hospital and you can't do the things you would like to do, but actually, how has it been recently before you came into hospital? What could you do? What is a good day for you? And I know that people often feel a bit anxious and nervous of, how do we get into this conversation? And I often have 5 questions in my head that I'm thinking about when I see a person. So I'm a geriatrician. I ask, what are the issues? Because there's always more than one thing going on. Number 2, what do we need to do or not do about those issues? And the or not do is quite important, because I think, as we've heard before, relatives and often patients want us to do when it might not necessarily be the best thing. But we as clinicians feel the need to do things, and we feel very hesitant. Even I, as a geriatrician who for a long time has been making decisions to not do, I still regularly question, have I done enough for this person? Have I given them enough opportunities? But that's where my number 3 question comes in. The most important question you can ask any patient, if you only ask them one question, just ask them this question: what is it that matters most to you in your life? And I typically get 3 answers when that comes. Number 1 is always family. Mm-hmm. On occasion, it is a pet rather than family.
Yeah.
Number 2 is, they won't say it like this, but it's some version of independence. So they will say, I just want to be me. I just want to be healthy. I just want to be normal. I just want to do what I always used to do. And that's where we get to dig and go, well, what does that actually look like? Where are you on your perfect day? Who are you with? Where are you? What are you doing? What actually makes that day worthwhile? What would, if you woke up in the morning and went, right, I get to do or be XYZ, what is that? That's what we need to know. Then the number 4 question is, where do you need to be? Because I can meet people either at home or in hospital, and we need to think, where is the best place of care for you at this point in time? And likewise, when we're thinking about respect planning, where is it best to have your care? Is it going to be at home? Is it in a care home? Is it in a hospice? What about when you die? Where is the best place for that to happen? We know it's going to happen at some point. And if we could talk about it in advance, that's where your fears come in. What am I afraid of? I don't want to die in hospital or in the ambulance or whatever it might be. And then in my number 5 question is, what is the bigger picture of life and death and the emergencies in between? Because I'm often seeing people in the ED in an emergency, and we know that everybody is going to reach the death scenario. So what I like to tell people is that if we can talk about it now, I might not be expecting it to happen this moment, but if we can talk about it in advance, you get more of what you hope to get more of what you want and less of what you don't want in the emergencies and in your final moments. So that's why we need to fill that box in, please.
What do you find? Yeah.
Well, I obviously coming from a different perspective, because the patients the people I see are already in their own home. So they're in a comfortable environment, they're happier generally. So I find when I ask this question, what do you value the most? What do you fear the most? That they really need a bit of prompting sometimes. Yes. It's such a general question, isn't it? So I sort of have to say, is it being around your family, or is it being at home? Is it just is it your faith? A lot of people forget to mention things like that. And then when I ask them what their fears are, and they think, oh, I haven't really got any, and then I think, oh, what about being on your own? Or I don't want to be, I want to be independent, but I don't want to be left alone if I'm dying. And, but I want to be at home, So, and a lot of it, that the stock response for them is, I don't want to go into hospital. Or I don't want to be in a pain. Don't want to be a burden is another one.
With the hospital one, I totally agree with you. Nobody likes being in hospital, including me, but they've said they won't pay me if I don't come to hospital. But no, for me, there is nobody that likes hospital or very, very few people. But I think there are some people that are very scared of saying they don't want to go to hospital in case that means you're going to give up on them.
Yes. I say that. I say it doesn't mean we're not going to treat you.
And it doesn't mean that you can't go to hospital just because you don't like it. And I think one of the other things that I wasn't planning on saying this, but just thinking about that, with regard to the entire respect plan, some people are really scared about having a respect plan because they believe that it means we're giving up on them and writing them off. So one of the fears that I will write down, and I see this particularly actually in people living with learning disability, they are really, really scared that a respect plan means we're giving up on them. And that is historical because there was some really bad practice around respect, especially during COVID with people living with LD. So I will regularly write fear of being given up on, ignored,
not being listened to.
Yeah, not being listened to. And I think these are very real fears.
I agree.
And people don't want their voice to be taken away by the respect plan. And, value being spoken to and asked about the situation is actually something I'll also put on values or clinical recommendations. Talk to their nearest carer or the person that knows them best. But I agree. Cool, blimey, hospital's not a nice place to do. And what I say to people often is that they've got to the age and stage in life where they deserve to have us to come to them rather than them have to schlep up to hospital if we can make it happen. But I'm not banning you. You can still come.
Sorry to interrupt.
No,
I think when they're very elderly, which is a lot of obviously frail patients are, that it's just the fear of not coming out again.
Yes,
exactly.
That's
but that is a very real fear as well, because we know a large proportion of our frail patients don't come out again.
But also, will they come out in a way that they value? So it comes back to that. Well, when you say independence is important, I always remember one guy who he seemed to like to do dancing and he wanted to go to what sounded like dance conventions, but that would mean they were in another country somewhere in Europe. So for that, he has to have enough cognition to book his train or flight or however he was going to get there, enough functionality to be able to get on the flight, manage his luggage and whatnot, the coordination, etc., to be able to be doing partner dancing, etc. But, it gave such a beautiful picture of what do I need to be able to do. And if I'm going to have various emergencies, which will mean that is not going to be my outcome, then that's not what he wants. So detail is really what matters, not I just want to have a good quality of life or something like that. That doesn't paint a picture. I had another man who had a motorbike, and it wasn't a Harley motorbike. I can't remember what kind it was, but it was on his driveway, and he wanted to be able to get back on this bike. Although when I asked him when last he had done it, it was more than 2 years ago. So we concluded that maybe getting back on and riding the bike might not be a realistic goal for him, but to be able to go out and enjoy it and maybe polish it up or something would be more reasonable. I have visions of Tanya driving him in his sidecar.
But that's true. We sometimes have to really guide people as to their values and fears, and being realistic and maybe making suggestions on what can be helpful, I think is it, or what is a realistic option. love to climb Everest, but let's be realistic. Maybe doing a couch to 5K might be more realistic as my aims and values. But, we do need to guide people. Is there anything in SWAST that you find particularly useful or not in values?
Well, I actually think that the fears part, like Fiona said, is I think pain is a big one.
Yeah.
And actually, we talk about the 3 a.m. test, don't we? I think it's almost like if this patient desperately is so worried about being in pain or being left in pain, and obviously with the situation with the hospitals at the moment, they could actually be in pain waiting to be seen in hospital. So if we're thinking that this patient needs to be admitted, do they need to be admitted right now?
Yeah.
Or could we try and manage their pain and reassess the situation maybe in the morning? So actually, if pain is really important to them, having a better, more of a holistic evaluation of what's going on. Let's make this patient comfortable. We can always reassess at a later time.
And I think that becomes true for a lot of symptoms, particularly if somebody is more prone to particular symptoms. So we often see people that are really scared of feeling short of breath. And once we know that's a real fear to them, then we can help with hints and tips to get it under control that may be exactly. And I think the other thing I've seen recently is obviously we have anticipatory or symptom control medications. And I've had several instances where people haven't been willing to give the just-in-case medications because somebody's not dying. And actually they're those symptomatic medications. And if we can prompt people that if somebody is feeling sick, don't hold back with the antiemetics, or if they are in pain, give the good painkillers. You'll see it on the ward, actually, Niamh, that people get quite freaked out when we're giving...
Yeah, and it's frustrating because a lot of people will say, and I understand where it comes from with a sort of, there's protocols in place to protect people that are working here, and they'll say, oh, we can't give anticipatories unless they're on a shared care pathway or unless you make them end of life. And it can be really frustrating because actually it's like, take away the paperwork and look at the person in front of you. Like, just because the medication that we're giving is used in end of life patients doesn't mean it's exclusive to them and it can only be used for them. So, I find that really frustrating.
It's like any other as required medication, isn't it?
It's a bit like, would you not give it, we give cyclizine end of life, but would you also not give it to someone who'd come in with meningitis and was vomiting? Like, no, you wouldn't hold it off them. Yeah. So,
but it comes back to that whole treat the person, not the illness. So he might not be dying, but do you want him to suffer longer with all this breathless and whatever symptoms? We have to try and take a step back. And I think that's the bit that people struggle with, because they feel this fears and value stuff is all too touchy-feely, woolly stuff, and I just want a nice protocol to prescribe something and carry on. But that's not what
we shouldn't be
want.
Practicing in that paternalistic way. And I think it's not only about that value of fear of being scared of pain, for example. It can help facilitate other values and fears. So if somebody doesn't want to be in hospital overnight, if you at SWAST treat the pain and pop them back to bed, so that instead of coming in at 6 p.m, where you're likely to be stuck in hospital all night, maybe you come in at 7 a.m. And then we can get you home in the day and get you back, get everything done, and then get you back to your own bed and your own toilet. So it actually facilitates all the other bits as well if we pay attention to what they really need sorting right now.
But better yet, if we had had this discussion in advance of the pain developing, then we would go, aha, if this person develops pain for whatever cause, these are the options available. And one would be get the out-of-hours GP or SWAST to put in bed, or go to a CATU bed in the morning, or whatever the various options are.
Or get your carer to give you your painkillers.
Yes, exactly. So it just comes back to this whole, it's okay to talk about these things. It's not going to make them happen just because you talk about them. And if you do talk about them, then you have more of a chance of what I keep saying. You hopefully would have less of what you don't want and more of what you do want, and less symptoms.
So it's about anticipating the problems.
Yes.
And I think it's also important, as like a junior who spends so much time on the wards and so much time in the hospital, I think it's really easy to lose sight of, just because I spend a lot of time here and I spend a lot of my life here, this isn't a normal place for a person who doesn't work in a hospital to spend time. And when they're here, it's really scary, it's really noisy, it's very smelly, and they don't have the sort of love and attention of the people that they are normally around. And that's really terrifying. And I think when it's your normal environment, you forget sometimes, and it's very easy to sort of get wrapped up in your working life to remember that this is not this person's normal, and they're really, really scared.
Yeah.
And so also, I guess this makes us remember that this whole respect process is about options. I think the general perception is that it's not about options, it's about denying you things. But actually, this is about options, because if we know what's important to you, what you value, what you fear specifically, then we have the opportunity to go, aha, this is the one thing that they're worried about. We're going to do our best to make a plan that means it won't happen. But if it does happen, or if they want to be at home in their final moments, have we actually facilitated that pathway? There's no point saying, right, you're really worried about going to hospital, sitting on an ambulance for hours and hours, and then an ED for hours and hours. And we say, right, you don't want to do that. But we haven't then thought, what actual support and background and equipment and medications would you need to be able to manage this at home? Should we be saying, yes, this is what matters to John, who doesn't want to be at home for his last moments. I mean, not at home, in hospital. But actually, if we have tried everything we can and those symptoms can't be managed, then actually we acknowledge that hospital might be the only option for him. But we have at least explored it and tried to provide the personalised plan and care that he would want as first option.
Question for Caroline and Fiona and you, Niamh. If you ask for fears, or you ask what people are wanting to avoid, what do you say if they say death?
It's inevitable.
Yes.
I usually say we're all going to die at some, we're all on that path, aren't we? And I'm afraid you can't avoid it.
Might you ask why? What is it that you're afraid of?
What is it about death
Yeah.
that scares you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I won't let, I like you, I say, I'm afraid that's happening to us all. I can't stop it. But I think why is the really important, or what is it about it? And I've definitely had people who it's about the specific symptoms, or that I've had people say, I'm really scared I'll poo myself and my family will see. I've had people say they're scared of losing control, and they'll say things they don't mean, which might be letting secrets out. And secrets is another thing that comes, that they haven't sorted the secret. They haven't found the long lost child, or made up with the distant brother or whoever it is. And I do think that, as far as I'm concerned, you can't put death as a fear, something that people, we need to dig into it more. Is it a particular symptom? Is it? And that's really important with those values and fears as well. And what you said at the beginning, Niamh, about people accepting care, I think that works the other way as well, because I do hear a lot of people say they don't want to have care. And I've had a lot of people that have said to their children, whatever happens, you don't put me in a care home, which is another thing that I no, because we're all living so long that for most of us, if we live long enough, hopefully, there will come a time when we need 24-hour care. And it's just putting so much burden on the family members to not allow that when it's the best thing for you. But I think when people do say they don't want care, and it's another example of when therapists and members of the MDT are really good at getting this stuff, particularly for values and fears. I know that Jo Shaw, who I work with on frailty, who is an OT by background, she always asks people, you've only got, your battery is so much for the day. It's the same as your phone. You've got your 5 bars. And if you use 4.5 of those bars cleaning your own house, or my my father-in-law used 3.5 of his bars, insisting on sleeping upstairs. So going down in the morning and up at the end of the day, used probably 4 of his bars, leaving him only 1 bar to play with his grandson. And the second we moved him downstairs, he had 4.5 bars to play with his grandson. So therapists are really good, and allied health professionals in whatever way are really good at pulling out this stuff. And I think I have had some of the most, you mentioned religion at the start, I've had some brilliant stuff from chaplains or religious representatives, because they do talk, but also you guys, SWAST. I hate the fact that you're often sitting in the back of an ambulance with someone for hours. But crikey, you hear some conversations, don't you? And I think I really want to empower all of these people that, as long as it's not a throwaway comment, you know, you've got time to investigate it or, you know, dig into that. And the same with all our community and our resident doctors. That ward round in the morning is not necessarily the time to dig into those values and fears. And as consultants or senior medical personnel, GPs, whoever, we need to use our teams for what they're good at. But at the same time, we need to empower everybody to really feel that they can share that information. And I have to say, SWAST are brilliant at coming and finding me and saying, they've just said this. I hope they're just as good with the other ED consultants.
I'm sure.
I just don't know whether the other ED consultants are as receptive as me, with their respect plan immediately pulled out of their pocket to start writing. But I know that even some of our voluntary sector colleagues, they will, because they have more time and they spend more time.
It's building that trust, isn't it?
Exactly.
At the end of the day, it's having the time to have that conversation. And unfortunately, you know, primary care doctors, they don't have time.
No.
And actually, so it is better off that we actually, I think, take that time to be able to do it when you have the opportunity.
Yes.
But then on the back of that, there's the whole, we all need to be forging stronger relationships with all the members of the team around us, because as I think we said earlier, there's a lot of perception of, oh no, that's something the doctors do, not me. Whereas what we need to be saying is we all have a role to play, you know, and if we each all do our bit, ultimately the job gets done and the patients automatically assume that we're all working together and doing it for their sake. But it's not in practice what always happens.
I was going to say in ED, I think I had a couple of experiences where if I'd picked someone up or I was seeing someone in pit stop, it was really useful to have the paramedic there, because obviously you see the home environment. And actually a fear that I heard a lot from people whenever I would talk to someone about it in ED is, I'm really scared of leaving my husband behind, or I'm really scared of leaving my wife behind, like whoever they were caring for at home. They're really scared about what's going to happen to them if something happens to themselves. And I think then working in conjunction with the paramedics who have been in, seen the home environment, say like, oh, they've got adaptations, or actually, yes, no, wife's very frail and or is really would really struggle. It actually opens a door to catch somebody else before they fall, and enables you to have like a wider conversation with the family of actually, if something goes wrong with patient A, is patient A's partner then going to end up going in a similar direction? But actually you've got a real opportunity to like forward plan off the back of just asking about one person's fear.
So excited to hear a young person thinking like a geriatrician. Ooh.
Our work is done here, Sonia. The next generation, get it.
We'll have somebody to look after us the way we wish to be.
Absolutely. And I think, though, if we can pull that back a step even further, and you'll know this, Fiona, that we then refer them to Carers Hub, and we get them to opt in to the carer, what's it called? When they can get that
Carers emergency scheme.
Yes, carers, yeah.
Oh, it's a catchy title, almost says what it does on the tin, Carers Emergency Scheme.
And there's lots of voluntary organisations that will step in and befriend and visit, and it's very reassuring actually to have them.
Yeah.
You know. It's very patchy though. It's very different in different areas.
But the other thing that is worth doing, and again, it's still patchy, but is encouraging family to have those emergency plans
Yes.
as well when it comes to those values and fears. So if somebody doesn't want to be in hospital, explaining that we can send rapid response in, but we can't have somebody there all the time, and having the time to explain to family this does not mean you're going to be the carer for the rest of your life. I had this exact situation with my brothers, and my dad went in for a hip replacement, and I said to my brothers, what are we going to do if he's not as good as we're hoping when he comes out? And they live on my road. I told them to choose their favourite child and then move near them, and they go, no. I think it's that they think I'm the only health one. Anyway, but I sort of said to my brothers, what are we going to do? And I said, I think this one particular brother should come up from Wiltshire and stay with them for a while. To which he went, well, I've got a family, I've got a house, I've got a job, but I can't just leave. But he's the one that can work from home and can work from my parents' home. And thankfully, my other brother, who's a physio, piped up and said, yes, I think that's a good thing to do. So it is, the banker, the economist, is the one that comes to look after them in the crisis. But this is about all avenues of emergency planning if they want to stay at home and hearing what matters to them, but also reassuring these emergency plans that this is not about wiping bottoms. This is about holding your mum's hand so she can get to the toilet so she can wipe her own bottom, rather than having to be in hospital.
And I think that's the advantage of that box, like the fears and values. It doesn't just frame ongoing management for the patient, it actually helps frame it for the family as well, of like, oh, actually putting it into context. They value their independence, or they value being around us, and they value this. And actually then, if that were to be taken away, or if a clinical situation arose that meant that they wouldn't have that anymore, what then would they like to be done about it? I think it helps them put it into perspective. And again, like, it draws people away from thinking about, we're taking this away from you, versus like, actually this is what we can give you in this situation, or this is what we can give your mum or your dad. So I think it then takes the sort of charge almost out of the conversation, which can sometimes be there when families are a bit like, and especially as a junior, when you sort of come in hot at 2 a.m. and they've just been admitted, and you're sort of trying to have a conversation and make a plan. It can be really emotive, and actually I think sometimes it helps them frame it in a way that's like, I'm not the bad guy, I'm here to try and help, but I also need to help you be realistic.
Yes.
And it does plan B, it is.
It makes the respect conversation lovely when you're actually working with them. It goes from being a sort of, oh God, I've got to do a respect conversation, to I'm going to do what they want. And they think you're the superhero. I just want to talk a little tiny bit, and I think Sonia touched on it, and so did you, Fiona, about that actually as human beings we have a lot of similar values, like independence, family, being at home. And that actually can mean that it's one of the things that helps respect conversations. They don't always have to take hours. They can be quite, if they're straightforward, and we're particularly if people, I think it's important that all of us as professionals remember that we can dip in and do bits that we've got time for. You don't need the whole day written off to be able to do this. But I do just want to touch on, we've mentioned pets is often a slightly more out there value. There's two other values, and I'd just be interested to hear if you have any that come up quite regularly but people don't think of. So one of them is for people with dementia that like to walk. That's one of my favourite values to put down. You know, these people who
walk with purpose.
Walk with purpose. They like to go places.
Yep.
And it's so important, and we so often stop them doing that if they come into hospital. It's not just about breaks that mean they can't walk. It's that the second they go somewhere, and unfortunately
and
that
we
can
label
be
them.
Wanderers,
or agitated,
or risk of falls.
Yes.
That's really important. And the other thing I just wanted to talk about is other things that we think are not recommended but people still value. So smoking and drinking. I remember having a lovely lady in tears who was very close to the end of her life as a result of alcoholic liver disease, and she was in tears because I wrote down on her values being allowed to drink without being nagged to stop. because it wasn't going to make any difference to her, but she was so fed up of every time she came into contact with any health professional. They say, oh, you're drinking too much. Well, yes, I know, and I'm enjoying it. So are there any other weird ones or interesting ones or ones that you've heard that you'd think of? Maybe I just attract original people.
I mean, we had one when I was working back in my previous trust who he had an array of hats at home, and for some reason somebody had told him, like a bit like bunches of flowers, for infection control reasons he couldn't have lots of his hats. So the nursing staff, whenever they had a spare minute, used to sit and help him make bucket hats out of the vomit bowls.
Oh, bless him.
And colour them in and things. And the family were like, actually, after he passed away, it was lovely to like take home these sort of like made hats as a like reminder. And it is bizarre in a way of sort of a reminder of like this lovely situation that we were able to sort of create for him. But actually it was sort of, that was a stranger one that I've heard of. Like, I value being able to wear my hats in the sort of middle of summer in the 29-degree heat, but you would walk past his room with his little bucket hat on.
Those details that
Yeah,
matter, though,
absolutely.
And that's what the family will
Remember.
And you've also just reminded me that actually values is a great place to write something about reasonable adjustments as well for people. So I had a patient in not that long ago who loves toy cars, and giving him a toy car or calling him good boy will mean that he really values being called good boy and feeling like he's doing the right thing. So you're more likely to get him to comply with treatments. But there can be all sorts of things like, I'm scared of noises, I'm scared of busy places, that actually lead us on to reasonable adjustments that we might be able to make. There's no point in saying in your clinical recommendations, please look after this person in a quiet zone. I don't have one in my ED. But if I know they don't like loud noises, then I can try and find the quietest place, normally a long way away from my loud voice. But so I think it's about thinking about all these things and really trying to be personal. Anything else anybody wants to add?
I did have a man tell me that sex was important to him, but I didn't delve much further into the details.
Sonia, you chicken!
Despite my talk of polygamy all the time around respect.
I think we should have stipulated not in hospital.
Yes.
And then made sure he went home with a supply of condoms.
There we go. I'll remember that next time.
Our older generation are having a lot more sex. We need to start talking about it. That's my other topic. I think on that note, we should probably draw it to a close. But I would just like to thank Caroline, Fiona, Sonia and Niamh for all your time. And I'm very glad you didn't get a crash call.
That's me too.
You can go back to work and do your on-call now. But yeah, thank you very much for all your insights and your time. And I really appreciate it. Lovely chatting again. Thank you.
Thank you.